Okay, so we absolutely love the fact that the Master Chief Collection is a thing, and it's something that we now have access to Halos 1 through 4 plus ODST and Reach all in one central place on the Xbox One, Series X, PC, whatever, and that is really interesting. And with the fact that a lot of the older Halo games that had online services on the 360 will be sunsetting sometime later on in December 2021, we wanted to kind of take a look back at the Halo games that are in the Master Chief Collection and talk about some of the bigger differences and downgrades in the Master Chief Collection versions, mostly so we can point out the significance of game preservation and how those older Halo games still have value in us being able to notice that there are major differences between the different builds of Halo that have been released over the years. For instance, in Halo Combat Evolved, which is one of the biggest games people point to when looking at differences between the original release and what we have in the Master Chief Collection, is the fact that originally when Combat Evolved was being ported from the Xbox to the PC, a different studio known as Gearbox worked on the port, which essentially ended up resulting in a completely different build of Halo, which would then be used for the Master Chief Collection, along with things like Combat Evolved Anniversary for the 360. Now, some of the biggest differences have been pointed out on various channels over the years, like for instance, Jacob Keyes looks significantly different between the two versions, as it looks like Gearbox used an older model of the character. Master Chief is way shinier in the PC and thus the Master Chief Collection version, where he had a little bit more of a rustic or nearly stone look of his gear. And there's little changes like this that have occurred throughout all of the Halo games really, when going from one game onto the Master Chief Collection. Looking a little closer at Combat Evolved, there's a lot of different side-by-side comparisons. For instance, if you're looking at the screen now, on one side you can see we have an HD widescreen mod that was for the original Xbox, and you can see it paired alongside what we have in the Master Chief Collection version, and things do look a little bit different. Some of the screen transitions are different, there's different fog effects on some of the levels, in some cases the cinematic animations are even altered, or there's just broken bitmaps and shaders. There's even some things that have slight changes and differences you might not even notice on a regular playthrough until you compare it directly across, like different lightings in things like this escape pod cinematic, skyboxes being slightly different, the grass for whatever reason is greener on the second level in the Master Chief Collection. In some of the animations, cutscenes, or even just in other instances where things are moving across the screen quickly, because of the uptick to 60 frames per second, sometimes a frame will be duplicated and an object almost looks like it's jittering along instead of just moving more fluently. And while of course Combat Evolved Anniversary in the MCC had seen quite a few improvements over the years of it being in the MCC, it is interesting to kind of notice there's some differences just between the Combat Evolved Anniversary 360 version and the MCC version, like most notably the Kinect support completely being dropped when it came on the MCC version. No more yelling commands at your Xbox Kinect to get it to throw a grenade or something like that. Halo 2, surprisingly enough, doesn't have as many jarring changes from over the years, especially like what we see with Combat Evolved's situation, though there are some interesting things. For instance, more recently, Luke and I have noticed when we're doing playthroughs, especially our Lasso playthroughs, this weird thing happens where the textures start stretching out of the characters and spinning around, and it's somewhat terrifying. We don't really know what causes this, likely it has something to do with the upscaling, but I don't know, it's crazy. Also, there are a few instances where some of the lighting does continue to be broken in Halo 2, like for instance, General Kid did a video where he looked at some of the differences with the Halo 2 shadows versus the Master Chief Collection version of Halo 2, and you can see the lighting is kind of broken in one way or another. And then also with the upped frames going to that 60 frames per second, Halo 2 had a ton of glitches and launches that are no longer possible in Halo 2 on MCC because of the alteration. There was a patch later on that did fix a lot of those glitches and made them possible again, though there's still a lot of things that don't function correctly. In Halo 3, they recently did a pretty big update so that they can implement other character models from Halo Online, and apparently this has adjusted the way that some of the models look. It has something to do with the new content and armor that may be implemented, and from screenshots that are circulating online, it looks like some of the things are a little bit off. We don't want to dig into this one too much because it might be something 343 will either toggle or fix in the future, but it is a little interesting that we are seeing such a dramatic change to Halo 3's character character models, even though they've implemented so much awesome content, this close to them kind of announcing the fact that the original Halo 3 will be sunsetted and we won't be able to go back and experience the game in its classic form. Another interesting thing is that there is a secret skull on the level Cortana in Halo 3, which is not available to actually get because in the Master Chief Collection version, it just spawns falling off the map. So you actually can't get to it, though if you could grab the skull like you can in the original Halo 3, it has you start the next level off with a Spartan laser, which is kind of nice early on, though we can't get this still to this day on the MCC version. Halo 3 ODST actually had a lot of changes from the original version coming to the Master Chief Collection, but then it even had a few more changes just a few months ago when it was added to the PC, and thus the Xbox version had a major change as well. So first of all, the most obvious one is these Destiny Awaits posters were all removed when ODST was added in. They changed it to this For Her thing, likely because Microsoft wanted nothing to do with Bungie promoting Destiny all the way back in 2009 in their update adding ODST in. But oddly enough, they also removed the Marty O'Donnell Easter egg that was featured on Kikowani Station. Now, they didn't take out any Easter eggs involving him anywhere else, like these audio references on Halo 3's Covenant are still there, so this removal felt a little bit specific, but it's likely because in 2015, it was shortly after Marty O'Donnell was let go by Bungie, and then this huge lawsuit ensued. Maybe Microsoft just wanted nothing to do with it. Also, the original ODST did not have rally points, but when it came to MCC, they not only added rally points, they added so many rally points. If you compare the rally points in ODST to literally any other Halo game, you wonder why there's so many rally points, especially on something like Teari Plaza, where if you rush to the level, you can beat it in like 3 minutes or less. It has a ton of rally points for that level in itself. So that's kind of interesting. And then going on to the newer changes to ODST that they did, surprisingly, with kind of everything that happened this year, they went ahead and decided to remove one of the graffiti things that are on Mombasa Street where you spawn in. And while we understand the reasoning behind replacing this graffiti, especially since ODST would be releasing for the very first time on the PC, and the backlash or stuff that came up with that nameplate earlier on this year, it likely was just Microsoft choosing to play it safe and 343 choosing to play it safe, though it does make us wonder what those implications could mean for kind of preserving an original version or keeping the original integrity of a game, especially with how much ODST had altered between its original release and the one we have on MCC today. Halo Reach, on the other hand, didn't have as many intrusive changes made to the game. For instance, there's one Destiny poster hidden away that's still in the game, and most of the big changes were kind of doing some little things like improvements to animations. Though we have run into some problems where the game will break a little bit and all of the textures will turn black, something we've never seen happen in the original Halo Reach, though it seems to now happen in multiple of the Halo games that are in Master Chief Collection, not just Reach, though it showed up when Reach came out. On the level Long Night of Solace, because the game has a higher tick rate, it makes the enemies more aggressive for whatever reason, pulling off some glitches at the higher frame rate because of that similar thing that we talked about earlier with how the game has to kind of inject these extra occurrences on frames. Something with standing on vehicles or moving objects kind of changes the way that they originally function. So a lot of glitches that were available on the original 360 version are no longer available on the Master Chief Collection. This one in Halo 4 kind of has bothered me way more than it probably needed to, but for some reason this cutscene just looks misshaded or the lighting is really off. This is one that is very obvious. There's a couple other cases throughout Halo 4 where this type of stuff happens, but this cutscene seems to most consistently be the most messed up compared to what it looked like back in the original Halo 4. Also, when it comes to multiplayer, there's some helmets and stuff still missing that were in DLC, along with some skins and tac packs that are missing that were a part of the multiplayer gameplay experience. Like, there used to be a perk that would eject you out of a vehicle before it exploded. That's not even in the MCC anywhere, whether that's balanced or not. And then, of course, this one, which has now been fixed, but I wanted to include it because I like it so much. There's this prompt at the very end of Halo 4 where it would tell you to press RT to fire a machine gun, even though that's not at all what you end up doing. And then in the grand scheme of the Master Chief Collection, there's a few things that hopefully will come in the future that still are kind of missing out. For instance, the credits of Halo just aren't there, not something that automatically rolls. Maybe that was a decision they made when they first released MCC to have you play from one Halo right into the other, though we felt like having those those credits kind of gave a sense of defining the fact that you had concluded the story, and even made the post-credit scenes a little more exciting. We could even tie that together with other things like the ODST loading screens that had some really cool little graphical things going on, or just the awesome UIs that were in each individual Halo game. We won't go into this too much because it's more of a nostalgic thing, but I do really miss the atmosphere behind those original title screens. My personal favorite being the Halo 3 Mythic multiplayer disc that came alongside ODST. Just when I would jump on there, play some custom games with friends, and sit on that main menu, it was just really, really cool. And then, of course, there are two emblems that you cannot at all get in the Master Chief Collection, which are the 7th emblem and Marathon emblems, which of course makes sense because they're Bungie related, though these are the two emblems that kind of got cut out of Halo that you used to be able to use in the original Halo 2, 3, ODST, and Reach. So these are just some of the things that are still pretty big and different between the original releases of Halo and the MCC versions we have to this day. We hope a lot of these end up getting implemented or updated in one way or another, but it also shows that being able to go back and cross-check and see how a game was originally intended to be played, or how the game was originally played and experienced, is still something worthwhile, and maybe you shouldn't get rid of your original 360 or original Xbox versions of Halo just yet. But what major change is your least favorite or most favorite? Let us know in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on for more videos like this. We've been working really hard on getting content out for you guys, so if you like this, please, a subscription goes a long way for more content like this. Otherwise, we'll see you all next time with a new video.